Okay, let us get started. And okay, we are going to get started here in just 1 minute. It is got the YouTube streaming, and we are going to begin on the hour. Okay, welcome everyone. Welcome to the second wave of psychotherapy integration, consolidating and unifying knowledge and practice. It's great to have you all here. As you're joining, go ahead and put your name and where you're joining us from in the chat as folks are joining and getting everything connected. So in the chat, if you can let us know your name and where in the world you're joining us from, and we will get started in just a minute. So welcome. So please go ahead and put your name and where you're from in the chat. And I want to congratulate everyone for finding us. I know there were some incorrect emails went out with the wrong date, with the wrong time for today. So thank you all for finding us. So let's see. Welcome everyone. Megan from the Carolinas, great to have you here. Aloha, Nikki from the big island of Hawaii. Love it. Erin, good to have you here. Tiamo in Denver, welcome. Nikki in Wisconsin, Brianna, San Diego, Anna Marie from Shaker Heights, Ohio, Lee from Ventura County, woohoo! I'm actually in Ventura too. We're neighbors. Leilani from Bellingham, Washington, Aaron in Phoenix. We've got Adam in Georgia. Donnie, hi! She's been in some of my classes from the Big Island. Good to have you here. Aloha. I hope I'm going to say it right. Idali, California. Rhonda from Arkansas. We got Holly from Tampa, Florida. Mary in Southern Cal. Vancouver. Heather, welcome. Santa Barbara. Inga, welcome everyone. So we've got a lot of folks coming in here. Awesome. From all over the place. Great to have you. Aloha. Got some more folks from Hawaii here. And all the way to Massachusetts. So I'm so excited to have you here. I have been researching this topic and I have learned so much over the last 8 months. I love presenting. I love doing my workshops, but I'm really excited about this one because I learned so much doing the research to put this together. And so I'm very excited about tonight. I wish I knew some of this stuff 30 years ago when I started, but hey, it's better late than never. So let's go ahead and get started talking about the second wave of psychotherapy intervention. And I want to start tonight by doing a poll. And so I want for you to go ahead, and there are 2 quick questions. Go ahead. What do you consider yourself someone who does or will likely use more than one theory? So please let us know yes or no. And then 2, on a typical day of seeing clients, how many theories do you estimate that you draw upon conceptually or practically? So go ahead and let us know in the chat where you stand on these concepts. Okay, thank you. You guys are doing great. You can see the numbers coming in. Hopefully everyone's able to see that. So awesome. So as you can see, we have the majority of people think that they're or plan to or would say that they are using more than one theory, and that's very similar. I think we had one person also last time in the last group when we did this live, and that here we're showing that most folks are using 2 to 3 theories. It's the majority here. We've got 34% doing 3 to 5. We have 3% using just one theory. So there's one purist on here. I love that you showed up. And then 5 or more theories, we have 8%. That was very similar, I think, to our poll last time, where it was about 10% are using more than 5. I think we also had one using just one theory, but the majority are kind of in this 2 to 5 range. Awesome. Okay. So as you are joining, if you're just joining right now, go ahead and I'll leave this up for a couple more seconds. So this is This is very much in line with what a lot of the research in the field around integration has found as well. And I think the part that's interesting is that practically, most of the people in the field will say that they're using more than one theoretical approach and that they are integrative. However, when you look at our licensing exams, when you look at how we teach in most graduate programs, integration really isn't talked about or emphasized. And so there's this huge kind of gap between what we're actually doing and then how it gets described in the literature and even how we issue our licenses. So we're going to talk about some of this, and hopefully you'll be excited about some of the new possibilities and what they're calling this second wave of integration. Okay, so the final numbers. Let's see. So yeah, 97% plan to use more than one theory. We've got 3% using just one theory, and about, what is that, 85% using 2 to 5. Okay, so awesome. Thank you all for doing that. And so that kind of gives us a sense of where we're at. And these numbers are almost the exact same that I got when we ran this poll with the first group. So what are we going to do tonight? First, we're going to talk about what is now being called first wave integration. This is the way we've been talking about integration since the beginning of the field. And then we're going to talk about this newer concept that some people are calling the second wave of integration. We're going to start by looking at second wave integration principles, look at diversity and research considerations around integration and second wave. And then we're going to start looking at some of these second wave approaches, looking at what's similar, what's different, talk about where you can go from here to find your framework and integrative framework. And if you are excited about this concept, I will invite you to learn more with me if this is something that is of interest and excites you. So let's go ahead and get started. Whoopsie. Well, how did I end up here? Whoa, whoa, whoa. Hold on. I ended up at the end of my presentation. Whoopsie. Shoot. How do I, there we go. Here. Sorry, I don't know how I got there so fast. I clicked. That is the problem with Canva. Sometimes I end up in the wrong place. Here we go. Okay. And next, yes, our goals and learning objectives. You will get CEs for this. So our goal is to really understand the future of psychotherapy integration. Hopefully at the end, you'll be able to identify at least 3 forms of traditional integration in psychotherapy. There are 4. Distinguish between first and second integrative models. And then finally, being able to identify at least 3 of the 5 characteristics of second wave integration that we'll be talking about tonight. Now, to get your CEs, what you'll need to do at the end of this presentation is log in to therapythatworksinstitute.com. Your email that you use to register for this workshop is your login ID. Your password, there was an email that was sent to you if you don't know it. And if you don't remember getting the email or setting the password, just reset password and you can do it that way. You'll need to complete a content-based quiz based on what we talk about tonight, and then complete the course evaluation, and then you'll get your email for the check your email for the CE certificate. And just so you know, sometimes that email goes to spam because it is auto-generated. So look in both your inbox and your spam and junk folders, and you will hopefully find it in one of those 2 places. Okay. Integration. Everyone's doing it. So there have been 10 major research studies done across the disciplines: psychology, social work, counseling, family therapy. These are surveying thousands of mental health professionals. What they found is that the most frequently endorsed theoretical approach, it wasn't psychodynamic, wasn't humanistic or Carl Rogers, it wasn't cognitive behavioral therapy or an evidence-based treatment. It was integration, and this is across all of the mental health disciplines. And in reviewing all of this, Norcross and Alexander kind of summarized that practically all contemporary therapists would qualify as integrative practitioners. And as you can see from our survey today, most people actually do identify that way. I think the issue is, and I'm guilty of this in graduate school, and certainly my professors taught me this way, that calling yourself integrative in an academic context is usually frowned upon. And all of my professors in grad school, or at least most of them, I will say, were pretty negative and down on this concept of integration. And so you kind of get this mixed message of like, okay, you go to graduate school and they're talking about all being purist about everything. And then you go to supervision and you look at what everyone's doing and we're doing integration. Why do we have this gap? So I want to start tonight by talking about first wave integration. This is what I would really wish I had known 30 years ago when I got started. I think it really would have helped me understand just the different theories, what integration is, and just have a more sophisticated way to even understand what I am seeing, how I'm working and how others are working. So I was real excited to get into this. So the first type of integration, and what characterizes first wave integration in general across all, we have 4 types here. All of these definitions of first wave integration, you're taking 2 or more theories and putting them together, kind of reorganizing them, like mixing up a recipe. So theoretical integration is when you create a new single coherent theory from 2 or more pure forms. So an old example of this, believe it or not, is cognitive behavioral. Cognitive behavioral therapy truly actually is integrative, because back in the day, there were behavioral therapists and there were cognitive therapists. Behavioral therapy, cognitive therapy. And they were at odds with each other, believe it or not, in the beginning. And then it got integrated into one kind of single approach that now most of us think of as a single approach, but it is technically and by definition integrative. So that's, one example of it. And so you can also, a lot of our evidence-based treatments very similarly are also theoretical integration. So for example, emotionally focused couples therapy. In that, Sue Johnson takes, the attachment theory, combines it with humanistic principles and systems therapy models. So 3 different major approaches, and puts it in together to create a whole new standalone theory that is cohesive, it's coherent, and it is totally unique. It is a different organization, but it was built from 3 different theories. So that's another theoretical orientation where you're taking standalone theories, combining them to create a new standalone theory. So that's theoretical integration. Then you have what is called technical eclecticism. And this is probably the one that that academics definitely frown upon in this. And I used to have a professor who'd call it, eclectic electric, and he would do this with his fingers every time. He would talk about it, but this is where, and Meichenbaum actually, who is a cognitive behavioral therapist, talks about how, oh, you guys aren't seeing my screen, it looks like. Oh, I am so sorry. Let me get the screen up. I am so sorry. Now do you see my screen? Yay. Sorry about that. So technical eclecticism is where you're not worried about the theoretical underpinnings. You are using technical, so that's techniques, folks. The techniques you're combining from multiple different approaches, and you're not worried about the theoretical underpinnings for each one of these. So technical eclecticism is probably actually, when most people say they're integrative, most people are practicing technical eclecticism. And that's very practical when you're in your private practice and you're just going to pull from whatever theory seems to best meet the client's needs at the moment. And you're not going to sit there and worry about the theoretical underpinning. So I think technical eclecticism is the form of integration that most of us are practicing. Then you have common factors. So common factors comes out of a stream of research that says that when you look across all the different theoretical approaches, overall, the body of research in our field, right? And that what makes therapy effective is that there are basic common factors that are happening in all the different theoretical approaches, and it's those similarities more than the differences that account for change, for outcome change. And so this is considered a form of integration because you're looking at all the different parts and you're focusing on the major factors with relationships, so the quality of the therapeutic relationship being one of the major factors, as well as hope or expectancy being the other common factor. So the clinician's ability to create hope in the client. So that's the common factors can be a way, and some people do integration through a common factors lens. And then finally, you have assimilative integration. So that is when there's one theoretical foundation, and then you're integrating ideas and interventions or techniques from other approaches into it. So a great example of this is the solution-focused genogram. So if you're familiar with intergenerational family therapy, they do these genograms that are sort of like family trees, right? Clear intervention. It's very common in those approaches. And there is a version, though, where, you can, solution-focused people have taken this genogram and adopted it. And instead of looking at intergenerational family patterns and triangles and closeness and distance and enmeshment, what they look at is like put a solution-focused lens. So they're doing the genogram, but they've reworked and reconceptualized the genogram as a way to track strengths, positive features, across generations. So you're a solution-focused therapist, and you're taking this genogram and you're reworking it, reutilizing it to integrate into your theoretical foundation that's strength-based. So these are the four. So when you say integration historically in the field, you're referring to one of these four types of integration. So I would say most academics are thinking about theoretical integration, and that's really creating a new theory, and that's something that really just happens in academia. Technical eclecticism is probably what the average clinician means when they say they're integrative. And in graduate school, assimilative integration was the only way I would let you write a paper on integration, is pick one theory and integrate other, other interventions into that theory. So this is what we're talking about first wave, but in all of these approaches, right, there is really an emphasis on we're taking different parts of different existing theories, reorganizing them to create a different, reorganize them to create a different type of theory. So, and most of the evidence-based treatments really are a form of theoretical or assimilative integration when you look at like evidence-based treatments like dialectic behavioral therapy or CBT for insomnia or functional family therapy, those sorts of things. They're usually taking 2 or 3 different major existing theoretical orientations, reworking them into kind of like a new recipe, organizing them differently. So that is what assimilation has meant up to this point in our field. So now let's start talking about this second wave and what makes it different. So the second wave is characterized. So second wave is a new term that came out that really is integrating in a very different way. It's focusing more on unifying all of these 500 different theories that we have, or at least as many of those as possible. And unlike evidence-based treatments these are transdiagnostic. We're going to go into each one of these 5 characteristics in a little more depth. There's an emphasis on systemized treatment selection, meaning you're choosing which treatment to use very intentionally, which is quite different than even traditional integrative approaches or traditional approaches. There are evidence-based principles of change that are used, and then a focus on the process of change. So one of the most notable characteristics of all of the second wave approaches is unification. And so most of these second wave approaches have some sort of meta-theoretical scaffold, and I will be showing you 3 of them. And people got very excited when they saw these in the last workshop. They're like, "You've changed my life." I'm like, "I'm glad, so hold on tight. We'll go over the meta-theoretical scaffolding." But the concept here is that we know that there are over 500 theories. Most of us have to learn at least 20 of them for each of our licensing exams. We have a lot of theories, right? And they're all taught like they are totally irreconcilable. They are at odds. They're conflicting. We're better than you, and I'm better than you, right? There's a lot of competition between them. Where in the second wave integration, they're like, that is not a good way to be thinking about our theories. We need a bigger framework to put it all into so that an individual can draw from as many of these theoretical perspectives as possible. So it's a really different way to think about what we do. Instead of saying, what's your one theory out of these 500? Second wave integration is really saying, how do we use as many of these as possible at one time? So it's a very different perspective, even from first wave, where it's like, let's take the best of these, it's like a best hits model. So it's a very different idea. They talk about the viewing integration is more in the person viewing, so your ability to see how everything works together, more so than in the theory or modality. All of these approaches, you'll know, are very full spectrum. You go from micro levels to macro levels. So there's biology, looking at the psychology, relationships, social, cultural, and there's even one approach that goes into ecological systems. We'll go over that one today as well. But you'll notice all of these approaches look at the client situation from at least 2 or 3 different levels, if not more. And then the concept actually is that the interventions on one level affects other levels. So this concept of unification is really huge, you will see. So another characteristic of the second wave approaches is, unlike evidence-based treatments, these are transdiagnostic, meaning they go across multiple diagnoses and really focusing on the root cause or causal mechanisms that are shared often by a class of disorders. So, looking at so having a model that is trying to get at a deeper level so that you don't need a different model for every single diagnosis that a client has. So this is obviously very advantageous for comorbid disorders, which is what most of us have. We have more than one problem. Most people coming in to see us have more than one problem. The research has shown that these second wave approaches are comparable with doing a single approach in terms of effectiveness, not necessarily more effective, but equally effective. But the big benefit here with a transdiagnostic approach is the cost effectiveness. So anyone who's been around for the last 10, 20 years, right, before we had especially this explosion of evidence-based treatments that are all designed for a single disorder. And sometimes there are different versions of it for, different populations, different ages, different ethnic groups, racial groups. So you could have like lots of different, evidence-based treatment, manualized treatments. But the problem is, A, most of our clients would need more than one of these manualized treatments. B, it's impossible to get trained well in more than a couple of these. And then C, it's just very expensive to train in multiple different evidence-based manualized treatments. Now, the field really does need evidence-based treatment, so we understand and we can research what really works best for a given disorder. That is important information. The problem is it's more of a research specialty than it is like what the average practitioner can do, and even what the average agency can afford, and how they can afford to train all of their employees. So this move to more transdiagnostic approaches rather than these micro, highly specialized evidence-based treatments financially makes a lot of sense. And just practically, there's only so many models that most of us can actually effectively use and get well trained in. So another concept that is prominent in these second wave approaches is what's called systematic treatment selection. And so the guiding principle here is that all psychotherapies are beneficial for some people, but none of them is effective for everybody. And so the critique here is that therapists, we tend to focus too much on like the cause of the symptom in order to think about what to do, where the push here is to say, we really need to focus on just making better clinical decisions. How are we going to work with this client? What's going to work best? And that has not really been a focus. And it's just kind of like assumed I'm going to use my theory, and my theory is going to explain the client's problem, and then I'm going to deliver the intervention that my theory says, where this is kind of really challenging that. It's like, no, you need to first match the treatment to the client, both their interest and their willingness. And some of the research is showing here that, things like using a less directive approach when the client is more hesitant or unready to change, or choosing the treatment to match the problem. So, we know that externalizing symptoms, so that's like behavioral sorts of symptoms, benefit more from behavioral interventions, right? Where internalizing symptoms like anxiety or depression, they benefit more from insight or interpersonal approaches where you're analyzing how they interrelate with other people. So like attachment style is what that interpersonal approach means. So, so the concept here is when you're using these second wave integrative approaches, that there's this intentionality in choosing and selecting the treatment to match the client, to match the problem, rather than just delivering the treatment that the therapist is trained in, or even just simply delivering an evidence-based treatment, manualized treatment, because a client has a given problem. So it's really focusing on matching treatment to the client and the problem. So there is an APA task force, American Psychological Association task force, that did a few rounds of analyzing, again, the research in a much more detailed way than common factors, I would say, if you're familiar with common factors research. They originally identified 61 different different factors that were empirically based principles of change. So these were 61 factors that predicted change. They boiled those down to 39 in 2019. So there's been 2 waves of research on these empirically based principles. And obviously that's a multi-hour workshop to get through all 39, but I just wanted to let you know that there is a second wave approach, or one of the principles here is just looking at, in the second wave, we're looking at what principles predict change across multiple clients, across multiple types of problems. So some of the highlights here are, so some of this is intuitive, but hey, that's what research sometimes validates what seems obvious. In terms of client factors, they found that clients who were less severe when they started tended to do better and change more, as well as clients who are more hopeful and more motivated. So the hopeful ones that aligns with common factors research as well. In terms of therapist factors, so therapists are able to choose the right interventions based on client motivation. So not, if a client's not super motivated to take action, matching up the interventions for that. The therapists are able to reduce resistance in their clients, and therapists who are able to increase functioning and coping in their clients tended to have clients who had better outcomes. In terms of the therapeutic relationship, they talk about a new concept that came up in these empirically based principles that is called responsiveness. And you can see in this list, we got, classic Rogerian, positive regard, congruence, empathy, quality of the alliance. But responsiveness is more than those classic core conditions that Carl Rogers talked about. Responsiveness is about the therapist's ability in the moment, in the exchange with the client, with the therapist, to be highly responsive to where the client is. And so that might mean doing the repair, noticing the hesitancy and responding to that, noticing the mood and responding to the client. So it's not just empathy, being able to accurately, perceive their emotions, or positive regard and respect, or congruence, how you are speaking, but it was literally the back and forth exchange, that responsiveness, and the therapists who were able to respond in the moment to a client in that back and forth exchange in an accurate way had better outcomes. So, and also supportive disclosure. So that's a disclosure when you're able to use personal disclosure, but in a way that truly supports the client rather than maybe what we could call gratuitous disclosure, disclosing just because, right? And then finally, with intervention, some of these 39 factors looked at a high quality interpretation. So being able to kind of do a psychodynamic interpretation here. Clinicians who provide more feedback to their clients, giving them feedback on what's going on in their life. Clinicians who are flexible, able to change their approach or their stance, promoting interpersonal changes. So clinicians who have their clients make shifts in their interpersonal lives at home. Clinicians who promoted more emotional experiencing in session, and also those who promoted more behavioral change outside of session. So these are some of the empirically based principles that can be used across all clients to have better outcomes. And then finally, we have the process of change model. And so Fraser here is arguing, we are way too focused on explaining why things happen and a specific approach and what to do. Rather, the argument here is just focus on what process will create change for the client who's sitting in front of me. Like the argument here is that we should be focusing on facilitating a process of change that works for the person who's sitting in front of me. And so in this approach, they kind of lean on a social constructionist relationship where the clinician is adapting to the client and working on co-creating meaning to figure out what the change should look like. Their approach to change in this model is very systemic, meaning they're looking at, what's the homeostasis, which has the problem in it, right? What kind of feedback loops do we have? What's the context? And how do we shift this to create change? So they're analyzing kind of the interaction patterns or the symptom patterns to see what promotes change and what works and what doesn't. So it's a very much process focused on the therapeutic process in the room. What do we do with it? How do I relate to this client to create change? So that's another theme you will see across these various second wave models. So let's just take a moment before we get into the second wave models themselves to talk a little bit about what diversity and research. So first, in terms of diversity, that integrative approaches are generally encouraged with diverse clients just because, conceptually, the clinician has more ways to be helpful to their client. They can be more responsive, they can be more flexible. And of course, considering cultural development and identities in the work, as well as making sure that you create space to talk about social structures and values of your client and how all those pieces come together. And certainly being open to integrating traditional forms of spirituality and healing into the work. But in general, integration is considered preferred because you just have more options for how to show up and you have more flexibility to how you can help clients. In terms of the research, basically the general finding is that integrative approaches are equally effective. Most evidence-based treatments are integrative. They've been designed and integrated for a very specific purpose to get a specific outcome, a specific, problem. But so integration, so research supports integration, of course, and the general principles that have been identified is that responsiveness, that back and forth, not just empathy, but how you go back and forth and respond to the client in the moment, being able to adapt to the client. So clinicians who can be flexible in terms of how they work, working from within the client's worldview, and aligning the intervention with the client and the problem. So these are some of the major themes and principles related to the research on integration. So now let's start looking at second wave integrative models. So there are three major models that we are going to talk about today: the Transtheoretical approach, integrative psychotherapy, and the therapy that works unifying framework. But before we do that, I really want to talk about early prototypes. And you can see that there are two, I'm calling these early prototypes because I found, you can see that the first one here, Integrative Multi-Theoretical Psychotherapy, was published. That book was published in 2008, and I haven't found any later publications or discussion of it. And similarly, the Biopsychosocial Meta Theory was published in 2014. And again, I haven't found anything else, but these two integrative approaches, I would say, very much are characteristic of the second wave, and that these are meta-theoretical frameworks, not like first wave approaches. And so I wanted to make sure that they were mentioned here. And you'll get the references with the handouts, and you can look these up because these are great. So this first one here, the integrative multi-theoretical psychotherapy model, what it does is it says that there's 7 basic schools really of psychotherapy, because I can organize my textbooks around these exact schools here. And so that the idea is in this framework is, and when you're working with a client, you're going to listen to what they're talking about and get a sense of what's going on, and then probably draw from 2 or 3 of these different schools. And so that's cognitive therapy, behavioral, the experiential humanistic, biopsychosocial psychotherapy. So that's actually looking a lot at some of the chemical stuff, psychodynamic, interpersonal. So that's psychodynamic. Interpersonal is a type of psychotherapy that has a psychodynamic foundation. Systemic constructivist is the only one where I'd separate those two. I see them as different, but they're the same in this model. And then multicultural feminist. So I would put the constructivist down in the multicultural category more than systemic. And so the concept is here, your client's going to come in, you're going to listen to what their problem or problems are, and then draw from the 2 or 3 approaches that make the most sense for their situation. So that is a good example where you're taking all of the theoretical approaches and putting them into one of these 7 general umbrellas and then using these. But of course, you can see you would need to be trained in all 7 of those different types of approaches. Then you have the biopsychosocial meta theory. And this is a very interesting one. This one looks at like concentric rings of systems. So the first is the individual brain/mind system. So that's more traditional psychology, right? What's going on in your mind. Then they look at dyadic systems, which is how 2 people are interacting. And then they look at, so that would definitely be a couples, but it could be parent-child as well. It could be you and your boss and how you're handling that. Then the next level that they look at is the triadic systems. So that's 3 people looking at triangles, which that was very interesting to me that was a focus, but that would be often times like a parent and a child and those interactions. And then finally looking at larger family and social systems. So the entire family, the extended family, the community, right? So looking at these larger social systems and analyzing everyone through one of these and their problems through these 4 different levels. And so you can see again how these are pulling together and unifying multiple different approaches, and then they're working transdiagnostically. So these are early prototypes that have been put out there in the literature. There probably are more. I did scour the research for about 8 months. And so if you have other models, that's very possible. These were 2 that really stood out to me. But since I call them prototypes because they haven't been kind of brought forward since then. But now let's start looking at the 3 major second wave models. So you have Transtheoretical model, and this is, I would consider, certainly the first major one that has the most research behind it. So let's go take a look at this one. So the Transtheoretical model is organized and conceptualizes across all the different theories using the 5 stages of change model, which you probably learned at some point early in your graduate career, which is pre-contemplative stage, the contemplative stage. So your pre-contemplative stage, you're not even consciously thinking a whole lot about making changes. Contemplative changes, you're thinking about what changes to make, right? Preparation is you've kind of decided on what type of changes, you've narrowed that down, you're getting ready. And stage 4, you're taking actually action. And then 5, you're maintaining whatever the new changes are. So this Transtheoretical model is organized around these 5 stages. And the idea is you're going to align your interventions based on which of these stages of change your client is in. Then the other kind of dynamic for the matrix they create is looking at the 5 levels of change. So you have the symptom situational level, you have cognitions, you have interpersonal conflict, family system conflicts. So interpersonal could, be between you and a partner and or someone, let's say at work, family systems conflicts, and then intrapersonal. So that's intrapsychic conflicts. So that they're, not just maladaptive, thoughts like, I'm a failure or nobody likes me. Intra-psychic conflicts are more looking at parts of the self that are more kind of at war with each other, for lack of a better word. So when you put all this together, what they do is they put all of this into a huge chart. Now, I have simplified the chart because you can see across the top, I have pre-contemplative stage here. I have contemplation and preparation. I kind of merge those, and then action and maintenance I merge, just because to have a 5x5 table would really overwhelm you, because I think you're overwhelmed just looking at this. You will get a copy. Many people were very excited about this table. So the idea here is that you are going to choose your form of intervention based on the client's stage of change versus and the level at which the change needs to happen. So for situations and symptoms that are presenting issues, right, pre-contemplated, you'd use motivational interviewing to get them motivated to make changes. If they're contemplating and preparing, you'd use solution-focused, and then they recommend behavioral or exposure therapies when making the actual change, okay? So similarly for maladaptive cognitions, so pre-contemplative, they're recommending Adlerian. For contemplation preparation, they recommend third wave CBTs, which are things actually like action and commitment therapy. Mindfulness is a third wave. Dialectic behavior therapy is often tossed in there too. So, and then for action and maintenance, they're recommending rational emotive behavioral therapy, which is a pretty classic traditional cognitive behavioral type of therapy. So that's how they recommend working with those cognitions. So interpersonal, pre-contemplative, they're looking at Sullivan psychodynamic therapies, using cognitive in the contemplation preparation, and then interpersonal therapy for handling action-related steps to that. Family systems, they recommend strategic for pre-contemplative stage, what they call transactional Bowen, so therapy for contemplation, and then structural for action and maintenance. And then finally, for intrapersonal within psychoanalytic, when they're pre-contemplative, existential, when they're contemplating change and preparing, and gestalt and dialectic behavior therapy when they're ready to take action. So you can see how all of this kind of comes together. I think the challenge with this approach is that in theory, you would need to know all of these different theoretical approaches, right? So that's here we've got 15 different theoretical approaches, and that's a lot of theoretical models to learn. But certainly for those of you either studying for licensing exams or in graduate school right now, hopefully this table can help you oh, wow, this is how the pieces of the puzzles can fit together and where they can make sense. And so it's and this certainly I think was the first major approach to stop putting all of these theories at war with each other and to show where each approach kind of shines and how it can be helpful to your clients. Now let's look at integrative psychotherapy. So this is an approach that comes out of the UK. There's actually a husband-wife team, and he is an organizational consultant. She is a psychotherapist, and they have developed this integrative psychotherapy model, or this integrative model, that they use both in their business consulting work as well as in psychotherapy. This approach integrates 3 different epistemologies. Epistemologies are, look at how do we know what we know. And so they identified 3 major ones: the intersubjective or relational. So it's a very social constructionist view here. How do we co-create meaning together? Then looking at systemic levels, and then looking at ecological systems. So this is the only approach that actually integrates ecological systems. I think that makes a lot more sense for the business organizational consultation, but it's very interesting to be thinking about as mental health practitioners. And so I want to include this if that's a particular area of interest for you, because it's an interesting model, I think, for us to be considering at this time in history. So in their kind of matrix, they divide it up 3 ways in terms of objective observation, meaning, what can you see, what can you hear, and how do we objectively, look at something? Looking at the intersubjective or social constructionist level, so how are we co-creating meaning, and then ecosystemic. So for example, if you're looking here at working with an individual, so objective observation models are like the medical model, CBT, psychodynamic, humanistic, bring this kind of objective reality. We're solution-focused, postmodern feminist, bring that intersubjective or social constructionist. Similarly with interpersonal family relationships, you got the early family systemic approaches that are focused on objective observation, and then the later family system, solution, postmodern, are much more into that social constructionist realm. So yeah, and you can see at the individual level, they also talk about and map those nature-based therapies. And, for objective levels, you have community and even down to species Gaia, with Gaia is kind of thinking of the planet as an integrated system of itself. And that's the psychoanalytic anthropology. So again, it is just a different matrix for how to organize all the different approaches, and looking at, using different therapy models based on which system you're intervening in and whether to handle it from the subjective observation, constructionist, or ecosystemic. So that is that approach. And then finally, I want to share with you what I've been working on is the Therapy That Works unifying framework. So this framework, it's a framework like these other ones, but rather than just putting a whole bunch of theories into one framework, the unifying frameworks, it's a single system, and it is a system for doing psychotherapy. It describes what you're doing in the room, and it's an evidence-informed system about what to do when you're in the room. It's not a theory because it doesn't explain why people do what they do. So a psychotherapy theory always has embedded in it, a theory of health and why people do what they do. And instead, this is just a system for doing. It's what do you do when you're sitting in that room? What do you think about? What comes out of your mouth? What do you do to be highly effective? Because we do know there is research on the highly effective clinicians, and what they have found is that about 15% of mental health clinicians are just better than everybody else, right? And so the question is, what are they doing? What are those people doing? Because you can give them an evidence-based treatment manual, they're going to do better than the other 85%. You can have them do treatment as usual, just say fly by the seat of your pants. They're doing better treatment than usual than the average clinician as well. So it's not in the theory of what they are doing, but there's a system. And so this unifying framework is trying to highlight those variables and teach you what to do in the room so that you end up being in that top 15%. And so this model is more of a synthesis model that's boiling down all of the common practices across theories. And it's primarily based on about the 50 theories that you will find in my traditional counseling, psychotherapy theories, as well as family systems and postmodern theories, family therapy and counseling theories. I've studied over 50 theories over the years, and kind of it's boiling down the common practices and removing the jargon. For example, for solution-focused, in the solution-focused therapy and narrative, there's 2 very similar concepts. So solution-focused therapists are looking for exceptions to the problem, so when the problem could have happened, but it didn't. Where narrative therapists talk about these sparkling moments or unique outcomes, when, again, if you look at the narrative, you would have expected the problem to have happened, but it didn't. So, and theoretically, those are different things. Exceptions and unique outcomes are different things, theoretically. However, to the person sitting in the room, they're the exact same thing. Find a time when the problem didn't happen, could have happened, but it didn't. So when you're in the room, thinking through that theoretical jargon slows you down, right? It's going to make you're just, it's too much to think about, especially if you're going to be responsive. Like we show, the research is very clear that responsiveness, where you are attuned to that client second by second, you can't be floating around in theoretical vocabulary because you're going to miss the moment that's unfolding right in front of your face. And so the idea here with the synthesis model is describing what happens in very simple terms of just what you need to be thinking about and doing when you're in that room. So when we look at this framework, I think one of the unique parts to this, and I do hope more theoretical models in the future integrate this, is starting with the self of the clinician. So who are you? How do you live your life in a way that supports you so you don't get burned out doing this work? And so the first kind of the 6 components of this approach is for the clinician to look at their own personal life and create a system for personal development and growth that is low maintenance, that you can use across your career to continue growing in ways that support you and help you to be better. Because so much of this work comes down to the self of the clinician and how we show up. And so creating kind of a very simple, easy to implement lifelong plan for doing that, which is unique to each person, because obviously. And so this piece is really huge. And I've had so many people go through the program who have said, like, oh my God, how come no one talks about this? When you hear self the clinician, it usually means go get your own therapy and meditate or go to yoga or do something along those lines, right? And so really taking a deep dive at how you live your life in a way so that you're able to do this work across your lifespan without being burned out. The second part is what I call collaborative connecting. And it really teaches how to do that responsiveness that we know is the number one thing that predicts positive outcomes. Because, you know, we all know therapeutic relationship is the key, right? Most of the research points to that. But the question is, you know, is what exactly does that mean? And as you've heard tonight, is that it certainly involves more than just empathy or congruence or positive regard. Those are required, those are necessary, but they are not sufficient to get to that responsiveness in the moment. And I talk about this as entering the client's meaning-making system, so that when you are talking and listening to your client, you are understanding their world the way they understand it. And so this is a very subtle thing. And once this clicks in for you, I promise you that everything else you do will work. And once you get this piece down, and this is the part where most people feel like they do. Most people do have good rapport with their clients, and most of their clients like them. But with collaborative connecting and this ability to truly be responsive in the moment, it's a much deeper way of connecting that really makes doing this work so much easier. I mean, and once you master this part of the framework, you will be surprised at how much easier this work is, whether you're just starting out or you've been doing it for 30 years. You know, I've had a lot of I have seasoned people going through the course. I have people who haven't even started seeing clients go through the course. And I think time and time again, people are shocked at, I had good rapport, but I didn't have that, what they call responsiveness piece in the moment unfolding, where you're really highly attuned to the client. Because what happens then is that therapy kind of change happens without much effort on your part after that. Nonetheless, we do go through a trans-theoretical conceptualization of the problem that really synthesizes 50 theories. I'll show you a snapshot, a big overview of this in the next, in a couple of slides here. But this is where, again, you're synthesizing all 50 major theories into basically 4 basic levels to help you organize and draw upon you know, all of the knowledge in the field. And that's what is so powerful about all of these second wave approaches. Then once you've conceptualized using all the theories, you switch over to, let's filter what we now have a really rich, detailed description of the client's problem, far more detailed than a diagnosis. Then what does the evidence base say works with this type of problem? And so that then you're pulling in the entire research base to figure out how to match up the treatment to the client, that kind of treatment selection. Then once you've done that, you can pick the intervention that is going to fit, matching the intervention to the client. And then finally, we take this basically the same framework we use to conceptualize the problem. We reverse it and you conceptualize the solution and wellness. And so this part is really, at least it's my favorite part, and I think for a lot of people, it's so rich because what it does is it creates this positive identity narrative. And rather than just complimenting and celebrating your client's success, you go back and you conceptualize it around their identity to really cement this new sense of self, these new behaviors, these new thoughts and emotions, right? You're cementing these. And this is really important for anyone who feels marginalized for any reason. And you can feel marginalized in your own family if you're just the odd one out. But certainly when we look at, marginalization within the larger community or society, this ability to really solidify the solution narrative and identity is critical for anyone who feels marginalized. And so this is really a powerful, it's my favorite type of work to do with clients. So here is the theory grid in this model, and you can see that you got 4 basic levels, and all these are very simple, jargon-free for the most part. Behavioral level. So these are the observable behaviors or complementary patterns, right, that we see. So this is where the theories that work at this level tend to be behavioral and systems. In level 2, you look at the emotional level, so that's attachment emotions, which is emotional primary attachment needs, as well as secondary emotions like anger, sadness, those type of emotions we tend to be more conscious of. And this is really the level where all the humanistic approaches focus on this emotional level, and also the psychodynamic approaches. The next level is cognitive, and most therapeutic models focus on this cognitive level. Most of us tend to go here naturally, but this is where you're looking at cognitions and beliefs, but also identity narratives. And one of the things, it took me years, because the cognitive behavioral therapists used to argue a lot with the postmodern therapists about what they were doing, right? And that, cognitions or identity narratives are the wrong thing, arguing who's, doing what. But the truth is, if you string together all your cognitions and beliefs, you achieve or arrive at your identity narrative, right? So they're just different levels of these stories and thoughts and beliefs we have and how we create identities from them. And I really think you need to be able to work with both of those. So this cognitive level is all your cognitive systems therapies with all the reframing, right? The language focus and systems approaches are very cognitive. The postmodern solution focus, very language focused interventions all kind of fit in this level. And then finally, you have the societal level. And so this is social location, as well as problem discourses. What does society say about people who have problems like yours? So this has really been the area where postmodern, narrative, collaborative, and the feminist and culturally informed approaches look. So basically, every single client's problem gets filtered through all 4 levels using a single framework. So it doesn't feel like you're using 50 theories, but everything gets examined through the behavioral, the emotional, the cognitive, and the societal level using this 4-level assessment, we call it, and you're actually looking at there's the dynamic that happens across these 4 levels. And so in this way, you can use 50 theories at one time using a single framework, which, people will say, oh my God, this is so much easier. And, a lot of folks who are interested in working on the societal level, addressing those types of discourses often have said it feels pretty awkward with my normal approach, because it's really just postmodern and feminist approaches that do this like at the base root program of the approach. And this becomes a very natural, normal way, a healthy, easy way to talk about those dynamics in a way that feels natural. There's a question here, was rapport a factor for the therapists who outperformed other providers? Yes, but they didn't call it rapport. They call it more this responsiveness, and it's more than just rapport. So rapport is kind of like a given, and I would say I think of it as we've moved kind of beyond the concept of rapport, beyond just empathy being key to the therapeutic relationship. Those are all necessary, but they are not sufficient, and that there is this back and forth responsiveness in the moment. Your therapeutic presence is probably a better way to think about it, but it's not just your presence, it's your ability to respond instantaneously to what's going on with that client. And that is a far more subtle skill than typically how we have taught rapport building and therapeutic relationship in most approaches. So some of the themes here, that all of these themes that you can see in the second wave, there are multiple approaches. They're insight, behavioral, cognitive, systemic. There is this more what they call a collaborative relationship, moving kind of beyond just what Carl Rogers taught. And then using systems, looking at multiple levels of systems across levels, individual, family, societal levels, and then integrating evidence-based principles into treatment. So here's a table that kind of compares the several of these second wave integrative approaches. So you can see almost all of them are using all traditional schools of therapy. The one exception is kind of integrative psychotherapy. Really, it didn't focus on so much the traditional counseling approaches, using a primarily social constructionist relationship. And that's getting at that responsiveness back and forth piece that we're finding in the research is most important. That systemic approach is used with all clients in most of these, as well as diversity being built into the theory you see in some of these, but not all of these. And that I hope we see improvements on in the future. The evidence-based research principles are being integrated into most of these approaches as well, and having a single approach across clients. And so there are some, so I think that is going to be real central, that it, in terms of working, and that certainly makes it easier. So some of these second waves, there's a framework where you'd have to get good at several existing independent theories, and there are other ones like the unifying framework, and this is what I advocate for, is having one single framework and approach that draws on everything, synthesizes it for you so that when you're in the room, you can be very present and responsive to the client. Okay, so we're going to do one more poll here. And so we're going to go ahead and ask what you're thinking related to the second wave integration. So does the idea of using a unifying approach that draws on multiple theories make sense to you? Do you like these big frameworks that are using more than one theory? And then the second question is, what excites you most? And for this one, you can check all the boxes that make you happy. So what are the pieces of this unifying framework that really resonate for you, that made the most sense to you? And again, you can go ahead and put questions in the Q&A. We're almost done with the formal thing, but I will go ahead, and I'm seeing the, okay, answers are coming in. People, yeah, I know you had to do extra boxes. So most people are, yeah, the concept of the second wave big framework to put it all into makes a lot of sense. And I think it does, because I know when I went through, I first learned all the theories, I'm like, I want to use them all. And so at first, in my mind, I was very much traditional first wave thinker, but I've come to see that you really can. And I'll be honest, after studying so many theories for over 30 years, writing all these textbooks, I realized the truth is I use all those theories, and I was afraid to tell people I was using all of the ideas from every theory I ever studied, because helping people is hard. And so, yes, I used every theory I've ever learned. I have found it useful with at least one client or several clients. Right. So most of people, it's making sense. Some people are not so sure. So what are the parts that make sense? So being able to draw from multiple theories at once, rather than feeling pressured to use just one, that's 85% of people really like that. Using a single therapeutic intervention process, 36%. Increasing your ability to be responsive to diverse clients, 85%. Working across multiple levels of the system, people like that. And increasing your ability to be responsive to clients, 85%. I think I just said that. Yeah, sorry, my thing. Using evidence-based principles that work across clients rather than kind of a manualized treatment. And then not having to spend time and money using multiple theoretical orientations. Yeah, because that is a lot of work. So, and there's one other, so you'll let us know. Okay, awesome. Okay, so I will go ahead and close this poll, and we're going to wrap up in just a minute here. So But yeah, so I think there's an intuitive like move, the whole field moving into this second wave integration with large medical theoretical frameworks, I think intuitively makes sense for most of us. So where to go from here? So, and I see there's a question about licensing exams. So if you're early career, pre-licensed, right? You still have to learn the 15 to 20 different theories. You know, there's at this point in history, I don't see, changes in the licensing exam are not going to be totally dramatic. So you still have to learn those individual theories, but you can use these large frameworks to help you see how the different components fit together, right? And you can see where they layer on top of each other. And so I think that's so helpful. For example, I teach run a marriage family therapy licensure prep course, and people, I use the 4-level framework that I just showed you here. And as people begin to see, it's like, oh, strategic and structural people are working on the behavioral level, and the behavioral level and the cognitive level, where like satir is working on that emotional level in the middle, but they're all working on systems. They're all looking at the same thing. Their interventions are happening at one of those 4 different levels. And so you can, even though you're still memorizing 15 to 20 different theories to take the licensing exam, it's easier because you can see how those puzzle pieces fit together where they connect. So I have had a lot of people use this to prepare for the licensing exam because it's helpful to like see the connections, especially in your early career. I learned 8 theories in my grad program, and today people are, I was teaching at the end of my career 15 to 20 in my master's program. So there's a lot to learn. So mid-career, most folks are using 2 to 3 different approaches and have been trained well in them. And so usually you have 2 or 3 approaches you're using. And what these second wave frameworks allow you to do is what I've been told is like you don't have to switch gears. So when you're sitting in the session, one of the questions you don't ask yourself is, do I use, CBT or DBT or EFT? You don't have to ask yourself which one to use because you can draw from all of your training very seamlessly. It's very fluid. And it doesn't feel like you're cheating. There's actually guilt that happens once you get really trained well on an approach. There's like, oh my God, if, so-and-so knew I was, switching gears between these different theories, I'm not doing it purely or truly. That stress kind of gets removed. And there is just, I've been told it just feels like I can go in there and rather than my work taking 80% of my brain power, it takes 20%. It's just easier to use what I already know. And then for those of you who are late career supervisors, one of the things that is happening is that, you are often an expert in several approaches, but your students are going to come in and they're often talking about theories you've never even heard of. And so supervisors have said having these second wave integrative frameworks is really helpful because as their students are talking, they can realize, which like of these 4 levels this approach is that the students using, and that you can actually have intelligent conversation about one of those 500 theories out there you've never heard of. So I think regardless of where you're at, having one of these frameworks to pull everything together is going to make your professional life so much easier. So I think everyone can see the purpose of having a meta theoretical framework. It really allows you to rapidly organize a lot of the expanding information in the field. Even when you're just getting news or reading an article or going to a workshop, you can see how all the pieces fit together so much more easily. And it really does address our diverse clients and quickly, rapidly changing client needs. You're just much more agile in terms of being able to respond to clients. And so you're going to get a reference list that goes with this, and you will get the references for all of these different approaches we've talked today. And you can also seek professional training. If you're listening today and you're thinking, wow, this is awesome, I want to learn how to use one of these, I'm going to share with you how my training program, if you're interested, we are launching the fall cohort. And I'm going to invite you to check it out because it has really been a powerful, powerful thing to learn, both for new and seasoned clinicians, which really makes me happy that I've had so many seasoned clinicians go through going, wow, I've learned so much. You can get your CEs again by going to therapythatworksinstitute.com, go to the login. There is a course, and that's where you'll find the content quiz as well as an evaluation. So I'm going to keep, for those of you who are interested, I will continue kind of sharing, about this Therapy That Works Level 1 training. There is a question about, is there a book on the unifying training? And yes, there is. I mean, the only book I have right now, I'm working on a standalone book of my Mastering Competencies in Family Therapy. Unfortunately, it's a textbook, which makes it expensive, but my 4th edition is where I first put forth this question. And so, oh yeah, someone is saying, I see rapport is more customer service. That's that's one way to say it. Yeah, where responsiveness is really combining the empathy and reflective listening. Yeah, I think that's definitely getting at it. Responsiveness is this in the moment. Where rapport building, I kind of always tell my students, I expect you to be pleasant and for people to have a pleasant conversation. But this responsiveness really is an attunement. And I actually teach it in my Therapy That Works course. I teach it using neurobiology, Dan Siegel's kind of attuned communication, that there is a neural resonance it goes down to a neurobiology is how you need to connect. And so we really work on that. And I teach you those skills in this program, because what I've found is that, yes, I can talk, you'll learn, everyone's going to hopefully walk away and feel like they learned something. But in a training program, what's different with a training program like I'm going to talk about here is that I teach you how to use it and do it. And these are very subtle skills. And that responsiveness is a subtle, very subtle skill. And so I think that is what is so key in these approaches. Oh yes, Kimberly's wondering what this looks like with family therapy, with different family members entering each person's meaning-making system. And yeah, you do have to take a little more time to enter each person's meaning-making system, because that's usually where the miscommunication is happening. And so it takes a little more, it takes some time, but when you can do that, you can create really deep understanding and connections with a couple or family. Okay, yeah, I'm going to tell you all about this, and there's a coupon code, so stay with me, Megan. Is there an update version of the theory-based treatment planning and family therapy books? I will tell you, Luana, that is Mastering Competencies. There's a long story there, but that is it. So yeah, so let's go ahead and I will tell you about this program for those of you who are ready for it. Okay. So the unifying framework, the Therapy That Works unifying framework course, it is designed to make you that top 15% of clinicians who just get better outcomes than everyone else. And everyone who has gone through this program says that they report significant improvement in their clinical skills, because you will watch me do therapy, you'll get to ask me questions, we will do a mixed reality simulation where we'll see clients together and I will be telling you what to do or what not to do. It's really fun. It is like Disneyland for therapists. We have so much fun. You also learn this single, easy to use framework to guide all your sessions. And people are like, when they go through this program and you saw the framework there, it's like, oh my God, this works. It works. The same framework, the same, approach can work with individual psychological problems, conflict with couples, families, parents, and just having this one simple framework, it really makes knowing what you need to do or say in session is super easy, which then allows you to really be responsive in the moment to your client. And that is why this unifying framework, I think, works so well for so many people. Definitely confidence and reduce stress. I was surprised at how important this was for so many clients, even seasoned clinicians. We're talking about how much more confident they feel because you know what to do in the room. You just know what to do. And that confidence really shifts how you're able to show up in that room. And I do address the career and income building because that's part of the puzzle. We're highly educated and it takes a lot of money to get educated in this field, and our salaries don't always match up with that. And so we talk about, there's a whole module on the self of the clinician, looking at your financial wellness. And I've had a lot of people say how life transforming that has been for them and their families. And then we also look at your career options, because there are so many now post-pandemic, and just so that you can make conscious choice about how you want to earn a living doing this work. So in terms of the modules, it's going to, there's 7 modules. We start with the self of the clinician. So this is where we go into we look at all 6 areas of functioning in life, your physical health, your relationships, your finances, your career path, your mental health and spirituality. And I give you a system that I've used for my 30 years to help me continually move forward on, my personal growth plan, small little steps. And you'll use some of those strategies also with your clients. Then we look at that collaborative connecting, entering the client's meaning-making system. And this is that responsiveness that is very subtle skill. And then, so that is the first real clinical skill we start with. Then we go into the conceptualization of the problem with 50 theories using those 4 levels. It is the more complex part of the theory, but once that sinks in, it's really powerful. Then I march you through the whole DSM-5 to go through evidence-informed treatment planning, so you understand where you have a lot of degrees of freedom for intervention and where you don't. For example, with OCD, 95% of people are going to need a behavioral exposure type approach to deal with it. Talk therapy and insight tend not to work. Whereas generalized anxiety, most everything can work. So you learn, where those things, where you have freedom, kind of where you don't. We look at then the evidence-informed interventions. So a lot of those really specific interventions that all of us need. And then the last module 6 is always my favorite. I don't know if it's good to have a favorite module or not, but this is where we look at conceptualizing the solution, looking at and lifelong wellness. And so a big part of this program is, I call it the 5 pillars of wellness, but teaching our clients how to sustain mental, emotional wellness for their entire life. So there's a strength-based approach here. And this is really critical for diverse clients where I was talking about needing to have that identity narrative. There's career and income building also as a module. So, where do you go and take all of this knowledge to, now that you have it, and hopefully that you are going to become a much more effective clinician. It opens a lot of doors career-wise for you. Okay, so your coupon code is fall 2024. So for this 5-month program where you get 45 continuing education hours, there are over 20 live hours of sessions with me where I teach you how to do this. It's normally $19.97, and with you, there's a coupon code fall 2024. It brings it down to $16.97 or $155 a month. So you can log in at therapythatworksinstitute.com/therapythatworks, and that link is also in the chat, and use this coupon code. And so we are getting started here in the coming weeks, and it will go all the way through January. So I've paced it out over 5 months. Over the years I've been doing this, people have said that's about the right amount of time. It takes about an hour or 2 a week to get through. Now, I know finances are an issue for most of us, so I have created a free bonus course for anyone who registers. That's my quick start guide on passive income for mental health professionals. All of us, we now have ways to earn passive income. It did not used to be possible, 10 years ago, but now we have the internet and social media and web pages. There's several different ways, and I have created a program that is going to teach you how to get started to create some passive income. Now, you're not going to probably make up the whole amount of the course, in a month or 2, but if you follow the instructions, I'm just asking for 20 hours of your time to start creating passive streams of income for you. Some of you are going to be of the nature and have the skill set to really take this and run. Others, you're going to have just a steady flow of income, coming in. But I want to teach everyone, because this is something we benefit society. It is a win-win. There are so many multi-millionaire influencers in mental health space just talking off the cuff without any research or knowledge of necessarily. They just talk from their personal experience. Where you, as a trained mental health professional, even in graduate school, you have so much knowledge that you can still be helping people, putting out high quality, information and getting a small income on the side from that. So I give that to everyone. If time is more your issue, I do give my 2-minute treatment plan and progress note. It's my best-selling course to help you reduce the amount of time that you spend doing progress notes. And there is now a dedicated app, Therapy That Works Institute. You can get this course that you're listening to, the recording of it. You can get it on your app too. But the app, people have said, just make it really easy when you're exercising or driving or doing chores around the house. You can squeeze it. It's easy to listen to the trainings. And then I know some of you still need to get 6 hours of law and ethics. And so I'm throwing that into the package so that, for the next 2 years, you have all your CEs, law and ethics taken care of. So hopefully making this, a high value proposition for you. So yeah, so I invite you to check it out. You can go to the webpage. There's a video where you can listen to graduates from the program share what it was like for them. And, it really has transformed, it really does transform people's personal and professional lives. It's really been incredible, I think, to see what this unifying framework can do. And so I know there's some frequently asked questions, and then I'm going to hop to the questions in the chat. One of the first questions is, can someone at my level benefit? And I have had people like from their first semester of graduate school go through this program where they're like, oh my God, I can't imagine trying to get through grad school without this. I have had people with 30 years of clinical experience going, oh my God, this has totally changed and made me a much better clinician. I'm going to raise my rates or whatever. No, but just being able to I can do this work. It's so much less stressful. I can see 25, 30 clients a week and not get burned out. So, the entire spectrum of training and experience this course is applicable because it's the first unifying framework we really have and the first training program I know of that teaches this type of model. And it certainly, it is paced for, all of us have busy schedules. Everyone has a busy schedule these days, or at least most of us do. So it's about an hour to a week on average. And you've got 2 years to, do all 45 hours and get your CEs. So it certainly is designed to be at a pace where you don't, fall out of practice with it. You can kind of just hum along an hour to a week, while you're commuting or folding laundry. There are live sessions. And there is, as soon as you join the course, you take a survey to let us know what times work for you, and we create a schedule around the people who actually sign up for this particular cohort. And so you can join all the live sessions if you want to. You can join none of them and watch the video instead if you want to. And the average person attends about half of them live, and half of them, they probably wake up or it's the evening and they're like, maybe not today. I'll catch the replay. So it's very flexible. I know some of the other training programs out there that do the live training, which is so important. We don't get enough of that in this field, are very strict with attendance. This is a very flexible attendance policy. And is the course worth your financial investment? My graduates say it is. There are lots of different elements. We actually go over finances and your financial wellness and what that means, and because that's an important part of our wellness. It's an important part for our clients' wellness. Money is the number one stressor in life. So we go over how to address all of those issues in this program too, another area that I think is often neglected. And I did throw in create that quick start bonus guide to help with that particular issue. So if you are interested, please sign up. Registration ends on Tuesday night, midnight Pacific. But tonight, if you sign up, I'm doing a special small group coaching session for everyone who signs up live tonight and who signed up live last Sunday. So if you sign up by midnight tonight, you get an extra small group coaching session with me, Q&A. I will mentor you on whatever you want mentoring on in the field. So please sign up if you're thinking about it. Today is the day to do it. Okay. When is the next level 2 course? The next level 2 course will be next spring, starting in February, because there is a level 2 that really is where you start. There's more content in level 2. We really refine all the skills, but then we start applying it and doing case consultation. And people have really enjoyed doing that case consultation piece. It's very powerful. Oh, okay. So there isn't a winter. There's just a fall and a spring. So the CEs you can obtain at any time. So you can choose to get those dated at different times. You have 2 years to kind of download the CE certificate and get the date put on it. So if you're worried about the CEs I'm seeing, you can. So there is the next cohort would be in February. So, but yeah, hopefully let's see, when is the next level 1 course after fall 2024? It would be February is when it would be. And yeah, so that is that. Awesome. Marquita, I'm glad you enjoyed this so much. Awesome, awesome. Thank you all. And people are enjoying the training. I hope you feel energized around this and see what is possible with these second wave integration approaches. Awesome, awesome. Thank you, William. Thanks for coming. Very cool. Yay. Yes, Megan, I hope you're going to, yes, join. It's really a lot of fun, and it is life transforming in a lot of ways. The first module, I will tell you, we do the self of the clinician and we look at your wellness in 6 areas. I've had multiple people say I would pay $2,000 for that one module just because it has transformed my life and oftentimes their families' lives. And also the evidence-informed treatment planning, we go into what happens when you have difficult to treat problems. You've gone and seen 5, therapists or doctors, and you haven't gotten better. And so we do the difficult to treat cases too. And that has been life transforming, I know, for many people who go through the course. Awesome, awesome. Thank you. Aloha, aloha. So glad you're enjoying it. I'm seeing some more questions. Yay. Can't wait to work with you, Megan. So Heather, if you want to receive, so if you want to do the February cohort, they're not today, but in about a week, go back to this Therapy That Works Institute Therapy That Works page. There'll be a sign up for the waiting list, and you can do early. There's an early, yeah. So we will announce it then, and you'll get a coupon if you're on that list. So I try to make sure everyone who signs up gets the coupon too. Awesome. Okay, very good. Awesome, awesome. You're most welcome, William. Let's see, great, great, great. Okay. But I would say if you're early in your graduate program, I would take this sooner rather than later. I've had so many people take this program before seeing clients, and the confidence that they had seeing clients, and they were like, oh my, I'm doing role plays in class, and all my friends think that, all my classmates think that I'm a professional already, right? Because I know what I'm doing. And if you were in graduate school, I would do it as soon as possible. Trust me, it's not like a workload in any of your classes, and being able to accelerate your learning. I mean, if I could design graduate school, it would be around this, because this really accelerates your learning and reduces the stress of learning how to do this work. And so definitely check it out. Absolutely. Okay. Would those extra courses be offered in February? I don't know. We'll see. I mean, I'll have some bonus for sure. But yeah, absolutely. We will have, there's usually bonuses. It is a big program, and I've thought about chopping it up into 7 little programs, right? But the issue is you need all those pieces to work together to be highly effective. And so it is a master class. It's 45 hours of training, over 5 months, but you need all that, you need all those pieces for each individual piece to be really effective. And that is why I've just kept it as a huge class where I give you everything I think you can need, and do that. Where do you get the app? You can go to either the Apple App Store, or is it Google Play on your Android device? Go to your App Store on your, your handheld device, either your tablet or your mobile phone. And I have both an Android and an Apple app. That is the Therapy That Works Institute. You got to put Therapy That Works Institute in, and it should come up as an app there. Okay. Awesome, awesome. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, questions are coming in. Oh, you're very welcome, William. You are very welcome. So yeah, awesome. So hopefully you're feeling like, oh my God, there's this whole new vision of how we can think about doing our work, how we can go about doing our work. Oh, yes, income tax, absolutely. Yes. So those of you who certainly in the United States, you can write all of this off on your taxes. So depending on whatever your tax bracket is, you get usually another 25% back of the tuition cost that you don't have to pay in taxes. This is totally a tax write-off. That's one of the things I do go over with the financial wellness, is just knowing that things like this, we need to do to maintain to maintain our licenses if you have a license. And even the associate licensees now need to do a lot of these continuing education. So we need to be doing it. So you do get to write it off your taxes if you're living in a country that allows you to do that. United States definitely is one of those. It is 45 continuing education hours in total. So 25 of those are pre-recorded. 20 of them we record as a group. And like I said, you can attend those live, which are a lot of fun. We're working with clients for the majority of those. We're actually practicing clinical skills in a mixed reality setting. But in those 20 hours, or you can watch the replay. Just, I like to give people flexibility, so there's not this huge pressure to, oh my God, a crisis came up or I'm not feeling well. You can catch the replay. But most people like to, like I say, attend at least half of the live sessions because they're a lot of fun. We have a lot of fun together, especially working in the mixed reality simulation is really a very powerful experience, whether you're new to this or you're skilled, because you get a sense, you're going to leave this program knowing what good clinical work looks like. And I think for a lot of people, it's hard to put a price on that because, you can sit in graduate school, and unless you're doing live supervision, which kind of a minority of people are doing, sitting through multiple long live supervision sessions anymore, if you don't have that type of training, this is really powerful because you really get the feel of what a good therapeutic session should sound and look like, how it's paced, how to organize it, where to go, where not to go with your clients. And so that's a real powerful experience. Awesome. Cool. Very awesome. Okay. So hopefully you all are learning about the Therapy That Works Unifying Framework course. You found that link and are checking it out. Like I said, if you register by the end of tonight, I'm doing a small group mentoring session for people who registered today and who registered last Sunday. So that'll be a ton of fun where you get me. And you can ask me whatever questions you want about anything. Pretty much, because the self of the therapist and the career path and how to do good clinical work. I mean, all of those things get interwoven. It's a unifying framework and you have to it pulls it all together. And so we talk about all these issues that, you can't talk about necessarily in a work environment. Some of these issues like your career path, your supervisor normally wants you to stay. And if your supervisor is encouraging you to leave, that might be a sign. But we get to talk about that and what makes sense for you and your career path, and to really get some of that personal mentoring, in a very supportive environment. So awesome. Yes, and you do get extra CEs for your law and ethics, as well as the 2-minute treatment plan. So you will have your CE met if you're a licensed person or even an associate who needs to have CE hours. You should get all your continuing education needs met. So awesome. I hope you are all totally energized about this concept of second wave integration. Again, if you've got questions about this course, you can email friendlyhelp@dianegayhart.com. Friendlyhelp. I'll go ahead and put that in the chat. But yeah, let me know. Hopefully, if you got excited, hopefully I'll be seeing you this fall. Otherwise, I hope you enjoyed the session today. Please go and get your CEs. Don't forget to get your CEs by the end of the month. And I look forward to hopefully seeing you in another one of these workshops. So everyone be well, take care, and I hope to see you soon.